Yeah.
Boop. Ching.
Episode 6.
6.
How cool is that actually? I keep saying that with every number. I'm like, wow, episode 6,
I wonder
episode
at what
5.
number we'll no longer sort of be impressed by it. We'll be like, oh, it's just another number.
I feel like for me it'll be like 20. It'll
Fair.
be in a little bit. Yeah. But it's crazy how fast they come though. Like if you just keep doing the thing, which
Mm-hmm.
you're doing, then you keep making them and producing them and putting them out and then it just happens. Like it's been
That's so funny because I, in which it's probably the title of the episode, and a lot of what we want to talk about in this episode is about fitness journeys. And I think that is also so relevant to a fit, not to really jump the gun, we'll pull it back, but not
Mhm.
to really jump the gun, but a lot of what fitness is just showing up and you don't get, you see results instantly, whatever result you're looking for. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It's that same concept of just having to show up and do the work. And that's kind of
Yeah.
what we've been applying to these podcasts is just showing up and doing the work. So it's kind of funny that you start off saying that.
And with the business, honestly, like you just have to do the task
Mm-hmm.
and then see what the next problem is, and then do the task
Yeah.
and then see what the next problem is, and behind the scenes do the other things that you know need to be done, and
Yes.
then eventually the product
Mm-hmm.
will
I feel like it's also been a lot of problem solving, troubleshooting with every
so much
step.
problem
We
solving.
start something and then we troubleshoot or problem solve and then we go on to the next one and we keep going.
And this week we're talking less about business because there's just not as much to say and there's sort of a pending problem.
With the
Not
business?
problem, there's a pending situation or thing that we're learning to deal with, and we'll update more on that next week. But the gist of that, or not even the gist,
Lesson learned.
yeah, the lesson learned from that is if you are registering a business, which when was that we actually did it in May?
Quite early on, that was one of the first
Early
things
on.
I remember you
It,
having done.
I feel like every single thing I do in life, I end up getting this advice from someone or learning it myself. So I wish I would just learn it, but just need to slow down a little bit before making decisions because the issue that we're dealing with now could have very easily been avoided if I had just not been so like, I need to register this business today. A
Mm-hmm.
totally arbitrary date. It didn't need to be that day. There was absolutely no.
Oh my God, I wonder if you know the date because could be our anniversary of our business.
Yeah, I think I'll look at what the exact date was. I think I sent you a screenshot when it was registered, but I should look at the date I actually submitted it.
Yeah.
This is our registration on Company's House, and we'll talk about it more next week. But I got a little bit of a scam situation with the virtual. I don't know if it was a scam
Mm-hmm.
per se. Would it be surprising to me if I were to get the scam? No. And I don't think it would be really surprising to anyone who knows me, just because I tend to be so trusting
Mm-hmm.
and
Which is why I exist in our dynamic to stop. And if there was anything, if we were going to get scammed at some point in our business, I'm glad that this is what we got scammed on, and
now's the
hopefully
time.
this is, our sort of our karma, our bad karma is
Yeah.
zapped by this one scamming, and we can go forth
I'll
without
actually
scam.
next week when we talk about it, I will show the email that came through from this tool that I was using because I had emailed and said this is the virtual website or the virtual
Mm-hmm.
address. I emailed and said, look, this was rejected. Can you please explain to me why this was rejected? And the email that got sent back was like a text message, basically. It was like all bold and
Oh,
lowercase and definitely just not a professional email.
oh,
And I immediately was like,
have I gotten scammed? Yeah.
oh my God. And maybe it's not, maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but it feels very much as though I've been scammed. We have been scammed. but there was an easy
Yeah.
resolution. And if I, again, had just taken more than half a second, because what happens to me, is, which is an issue that I'm working on, is I'll decide to do a task. And when I have decided to start that task, nothing can stop me.
Mm.
And I need to be better about letting some things absorb and letting them filter through and then coming back to it maybe the next day.
Yeah.
And it would help me out a lot, probably. But that's okay.
Lesson learned. And
We'll talk about it more
yeah,
next
we're hopefully everything has gone through fine.
Yes, I'm sure it'll be fine. The woman
Yes.
on the phone reassured me, so I'm sure it'll be fine. The other news that was very exciting was that editing this episode was much, or last week's episode was much easier,
I
which
love
Layla
Riverside.
can speak to because we
It
recorded our last week virtually because I wasn't here, and now I'm in London again, and we're still recording virtually.
Yes.
So
Whilst I
that's
would love to have you
everything.
right beside me on the sofa, it just made the editing so easy. The software was very user friendly. There was like a
Yeah,
little bit
what
of a
made it easy? Like, what was the?
it just I mean it was it all even though we had recorded sort of back to back a few times, and actually I wonder what it will do. It'll be interesting to see this new project because I don't know if this is considered a new project or not. Um,
Oh yeah,
but it had all the clips grouped together and just like back to back. And so you could just go in and sort through it. And then you could also edit just through the transcript. Like if you cut out words, it was like it could cut it out from the text as well. Um,
wow.
yeah, it also generated for us some clips. I don't actually know if you ended up using because I know when you were posting a lot of the clips, it was my very sort of hectic 48 hours of the week. So I kind of need to just like go through them now and like actually watch them all like from
Yeah,
my
I
personal
did.
account.
So Riverside does this thing where it creates a bunch of basically shorts for you, and I really liked them. I it was really interesting to me that when I've made the clips myself, doing the editing bit, I've only ever done it so that when one of us is talking, it's on us and it
Hmm.
just goes back and forth. Whereas, however they do it, sort of made it look more like a conversation because they would show some moments where one of us wasn't talking but was still listening.
Yeah.
And I kind of expected them to be like pretty bad,
Hmm.
and then they were actually really good. So
Yeah.
this the ones I posted on Instagram are a combo of ones I made and ones the Riverside made. But I am curious to see if, if it produces good ones again, then I might just use those.
Yeah. I mean, it might always be worth it to have a mix of the both, just because we are. It'll depend if there are parts that we think are more worthwhile to clip. If they, because what I got from some of the ones I looked at, and I didn't actually look at them in more detail, so I should, is I felt that theirs were not more informative, but actual like sort of substantive like clips, whereas we might go and clip in like a funnier moment or just um, something more not human, but just something
Yeah,
small. Um, but
I would
it is
agree.
great that it means that we just always have that anyways, because if there's ever a week where neither of us have the time to go in or do a clip or whatever it may be, we know that it will be generating some that we can use.
Yeah.
Um, and even just while recording, I like that I can sort of just check in, make sure my audio levels are like not at zero. And then
Yeah.
just knowing it'll all be there on the laptop. And then obviously the process. It was even easier than the SD card, which we all know I never thought I could chop the SD card.
Isn't it
So,
funny also to think about the first episode we did, we just had iPhone camera
hmm,
looking at us.
yeah, not
We
even flip the correct way around.
not even flipped the correct way around, and we didn't know if our mics were picking up anything.
Yeah.
We didn't have any kind of live feedback.
We
And
just sat
then,
and airdropped them to each other afterwards as well.
mhm,
So,
I know. And then when you figured out that you could watch us on your laptop while we
hmm,
were recording, that was like,
yeah.
oh my God, crazy. I also, one thing that I was really happy about last week is I expected the recording to look really clunky
Hmm.
because we're not together. And it actually had, I thought, pretty much no effect on how it looked.
Yeah, it was
I
super
thought it
smooth.
looked great.
Yeah.
So well done, Riverside, whoever created this.
I
Big
think it'll
fan.
also be so great when we eventually have guests on as well. I also saw you can, so obviously we have both joined on as hosts. We could have, I don't know if you saw there was an option where you can join on as a producer. And I imagine if you join on as a producer, there is just no camera, so your screen is not being filmed, but they could go in and sort of edit and work on the
On
back
it.
end. So if we,
Yeah,
one day ever have a producer or there was a situation where we needed, sorry, my ankle's changing,
that's so
where we
cool,
needed to do
actually.
that, we could.
Yeah, and there's a little, I can see in the upper right hand corner, there's like an invite thing. So I don't know. I don't know if you've seen the way that we can invite guests on to record, but I'm guessing that
Yes.
is
So basically,
part
because
of it.
I think both times I've hopped on before you, in the box just like next to where my screen is, it'll be like another box, and then it's like invite guest, and it'll give like the link, and it's basically you would share that, and they sort of hop on it like a Zoom link,
So
um,
cool.
or something like that. I
It's
think they
so
may have
cool.
to have Chrome to do it. I would have to try and see, but because I tried to jump onto this through Safari, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
didn't
It doesn't
allow
like
me to.
Safari.
No, so it wanted me on Chrome, which also reminds. So we are now halfway through. I think is that the free trial for Riverside Pro.
Yeah,
After our experience with it, I imagine we will be sticking with Riverside Pro.
it's very cool.
Yes,
It's,
and so it was super seamless
yeah.
then using this, and as much as I sort of hate the AI of it all, the AI assistance that it has, which is what has created the clips and what helps like just obviously everything run more smoothly, alongside Buzzsprout and then our the AI assistance through Buzzsprout as well, has just made this as seamless as possible because whilst it is a passion project, as we keep saying, there are other things we want our energy to focus on. So if I can spend less hours trying to edit the podcast
Yeah.
and upload the podcast, I can spend more time curating for Honeycomb Studios.
Yeah. It's just the time. It wasn't like I enjoyed making the little clips and things, but it is a lot. And the editing you were doing was a lot of time.
Yes. It
And
was
it's
also then sort
not.
of just draining because then I was like, well, I don't want to do anything else for the business. Whereas, like, for example, this morning, because I also know there's like, stuff that I just need to do, and if I just start it, it will be much easier than my brain is building it up to be.
Yeah.
I've been doing early morning workouts, so I'm doing like that, like first
I
six
saw
forty.
your
Did you see how
Instagram
funny? That's
posting.
how I, yeah, that's how I show up to the workout. That's how comfortable I feel around all the like group I see there. I came down the stairs to it in the morning, and one of the coaches, she just looked at me, and I, like in a very like we are friends, she just like burst out laughing, and she was like, "Mood," and I was like, "Yeah, I just."
Are you a normally early morning? Do you just force yourself to do that, or is that your
I
natural?
I mean, I'm an early morning person when I have been able to like sleep early enough the night before. And I'm early morning enough in the sense that I prefer to teach in the morning. I like to work like clients that start at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. I have actually like absolutely no problem with that. But I was never early morning enough that I was doing that workout before the 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. I mean, I was also not
Working out before
working
work is
out.
a whole different beast because you realistically, yeah, need to be up at 5.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very lucky in that I'm not, my commute to my workout studio is not that bad. So it means that I can sleep in a little bit longer. But yeah, it's that thing where I feel like there's being a morning person and then there's being an early morning workout person pre-work. And that was like a whole different beast. But
Yeah.
what was happening was also some days of the week I was having to wake up early to work out because it's the only time I could fit in that time. Um, but because some days I was and some days I wasn't, it was throwing off my sleep a lot. And it's actually easier if I just stick with sleep waking up early because it means I'm sleeping early and waking up early, and that
Consistent.
consistency, yeah,
Yeah.
is what's
Yeah.
better because it was becoming hard on days where I didn't want to sleep early because I had woken up late. So it was, and I
Yeah.
know the switch is much better, I'm much more productive if I, it's only positive because I was saying this to another coach this morning. She's like, I've yet to see the negative you're saying. I was like, yeah, well, no, I don't want to commit to all the more, like, I just never saw myself as this person. So now that I am becoming an early morning workout person, I don't, it's a new identity for me.
Yeah.
But it meant that I finished my workout and then had time to just sit and get some of the studio or some of the work on the spreadsheet that I had to do before I made it to work because I had a bit of a later start with my
You
classes
did it
today.
before coming to work even.
Yeah, I just had like
That's
I had
amazing.
half
Yeah.
an hour free, and I was like, I was sat on the couch and I was like, I can just sit and do it. Like just open the spreadsheet because it's been looming over my head. And I had a lot of time for it like later today, um, sometime yesterday, and then also mainly Friday. But I was like, if I just start it, I know it's going to be so much easier than I thought. And I was on that post-workout endorphin high, and I just
Yeah.
sat and I tip-tapped away. And wouldn't you know it,
Thing, getting
it was
started.
fine.
It's just the getting started. It's like what you said last week about even teaching a class. And you said, the second I do my half roll back,
Yeah.
I'm there, I'm ready. Can relate to that as well. This morning, when I woke up to come to Pi, I had probably 30 seconds of, is there any possible reason why I would need to not go? The answer was no.
Yeah.
And then I went, and then I was so happy that I went. So,
Yeah.
just how it is.
It was nice
But
in the studio today.
yeah,
Weather was nice.
it was good energy. This week, well, I guess we talked about this a little bit last week, but we have decided to put interviews that we're going to do behind a paywall, which actually it was
Bum bum
funny.
bum.
Bum
Sorry.
bum 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 bum. This morning I saw Keelan, and the first thing she said to me was, "Great idea, interviews behind a paywall."
Really? Okay.
And I thought, okay, that's good. And I just have thought about it even more, and I continue to feel. I mean, even we were having a conversation with Holly, the owner of Pi, who we've mentioned several times. I don't know how many times I have to say the owner of Pi, but that's who she is, Holly. I was talking to Holly, and you were right there, and she was already starting to kind of say, you should interview this person, and that would be really cool. And to your point afterwards, where you said maybe she could help us get in contact with those people, there's just value that we have created in the relationships that we've made, not in a selfish way, but it hasn't come from nowhere. I've
No,
been
it's a
working closely with
network.
Polly for over a year, and we trust each other and have a good relationship. So
Yeah. No, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it also, even like paywall aside, I think what we are trying to build with Honeycomb, it just aligns so closely with that vision that I think it would
yeah,
have to, even if we weren't putting it behind a paywall, I would have wanted to find a way to embed it onto that website in some way or
yeah,
another. So this only makes more sense. Um, and maybe there are some interviews with people who are newer to the Pilates world that we may or may not, maybe that can live on both. But I think at least with some of the sort of people who we want to interview because of how established they are and their like legacy almost, it
yeah,
makes sense to exist. And like you're saying, we might have the first 5 minutes on sticky notes, but I think I also like that sticky notes will always be us two. There's no
yeah,
requirement to get a guest on. We are each other's guests. So there's
yeah,
no pressure to have a certain amount of interviews or not. There's no pressure for each week to necessarily have a roadmap, whilst we always will try to and have, we want it to still be somewhat productive, our conversation.
yeah.
There will be a much higher bar set for that podcast or those
Behind the interviews.
interviews. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
want to say the name just yet because it is so special and it gets me really excited because
I know.
um, it was the part that I was most excited about during my thesis, my final like dissertation for university, and that like chapter was my actual favorite.
Yeah,
So
that's
I want
the
to
other
see if I
thing.
can repurpose some of that actually because I just
Yeah,
talk about what it is in general in that dissertation and it should be probably documented.
that's the other thing that's been so cool about it. And actually, I was saying to Holly, what was I saying to her? Oh, she was talking about the teacher training program at Pi, and I asked her because it's now being expanded and will be taught in Tala's studio at True Pilates. And so I was just asking her about how that's going to look financially and who will be teaching it. And
Who will
she
be teaching?
mentioned, so she's going to teach weekend 1 and 4.
Nice.
and then Nazia and Sophia are doing 2 and 3. But she said she was hoping to pass along weekend 4. I think she really likes to be there for weekend 1 to
Introduce them.
introduce and kind of, this is the thing about classical Pilates, right? Is like it is getting passed down. It's not a, I was going to say it's not a theory, but that's not quite true. It's very much rooted in sort of storytelling in some way, and there's a history to it. And so Holly said that she was hoping to pass along the 4th weekend to someone, and that she just wanted that person to observe her teaching it one time to get the story woven in. It was along the lines of that. And I had a moment where she was telling me that, and I thought that's exactly why I want to do all of this anyway, because I think there's a huge difference between going through a training program and not getting any history about what it is you're actually learning, and going through a training program and understanding the origins and the people involved and the various actors and being potentially critical about its history. These are all very important things. And again, in alignment with Honeycomb Studios, it all makes a lot of sense. And I kind of, it's cool that it's evolved to this place because it
Yes.
does just make sense.
I think of that very first meeting you and I had at the coffee shop by Pi at District,
At District, yeah.
and where it sort of has come from then. And it is so cool because I think especially Honeycomb Studios has built out to so much more than I was expecting it to. I thought the
Yeah.
sort of big behemoth of a task and of a website, oh God, sorry, my angles are all over the place, um, would be Hex. And whilst Hex has a lot to it as well, I think Honeycomb Studios is becoming such a vibrant website and a vibrant community in the exact way we wanted it to. And I think we
Yeah.
had hopes of this, but I don't think we really expected this, for example.
Yeah.
And yet, to what you're saying, I think that would be so cool to talk about. And I think it would then almost conversely be so interesting to talk to people who have set up and run or started teacher training programs in places where they may not have any of that history or that background, and to see how they teach it, because ultimately everything can always be traced back to something. So the Equinox teacher training traces back to Power Pilates, which traces back to whoever had done that, and it all goes through, you know,
Yeah.
some route. But it
Yeah.
would be cool to then, where we are able to talk to some instructors who have that first-hand experience and then some who don't, because that is another thing of that like whole elitism. And whilst it's not, I don't think it's elitist to speak to people and to highlight maybe the importance of that history. We're not saying that you need it to be a good teacher, but we're saying that because it exists and it is such a recent ideology, or not ideology, God, that's a whole other conversation. Theology, not even theology. What is
What was
it?
I saying? I didn't know. I almost said theory. I mean, it's a practice.
A practice. I like practice. Some would say a way of living,
But
a
also,
philosophy.
and I again don't remember if we spoke about this last week, but you've talked a bit about your education being in geography and maybe being interested at one point in anthropology, history, those types of things. I did a liberal arts education and studied a lot of history and philosophy and things. And I, it is cool that we're getting to sort of apply that to
Yes.
this in some ways. And I really do think it's important, especially now because Pilates is such a popular, often incorrectly advertised. I guess that's not really fair because Pilates is a lot of things, but it is advertised in a really broad way. And I don't really hear a lot of conversation about where it came from. I mean,
No.
and I haven't done a ton of research on it except for my own education on it through Pi, but and reading, Return to Life and things like that. But it was it came about at a pretty interesting time in history, and
Yes.
there's definitely some criticism to be had around elements of it and Joseph Pilates. I have no doubt. So, and it doesn't mean to bash the whole system, but it's just
No.
important to acknowledge and talk about because
And I think also, as much as it's his work, although I actually did see something today, which is true, and they were saying to also mention his, I believe she was his wife, Clara or Cara, or I believe
Hmm.
it's Clara, because
Yeah.
she did so much of the documentation of his work and was so integral to his work. And whilst he gets credited a lot for it, she was very integral to it. Um,
Yeah.
but also, so whilst it is his or their work, there is also so much, everything we know now in our teaching comes from his original students who wrote it down and created what we now understand as the sort of system that you can train people through and assess people through. He
Hmm.
just taught because it was all lived in his head, so he didn't write it down for anyone. So, well, and that's not to say that he does not deserve criticism or there shouldn't be criticism towards what it originally was, but the people who will be speaking to have experience not necessarily with Joseph, but with those students and what they each of those students created it to be and what it has like gone on to become. So I think that whilst it was this original ideal or whatever we want to call it, contrology, which is
Yeah.
what it was originally referred
Yeah.
to, um, it is it did change through each of those students, um, and that is almost what we want to discover. I feel like even more than
Yes.
anything, because it
True.
should
Yeah.
it does and you know what, it might be interesting to speak about because it does deserve to be shared and it is like almost like knowledge and property. But there was that whole court case where um,
Mhm.
there's someone who's trying to sue about that knowledge and really, I don't know if we want to name names or anything, but that was something that was going on about whether it's like sort of public domain and public knowledge or whether it
Yeah.
could all be kept. So we're almost trying to do the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. And I think maybe we're biased to it because we're in the world, but Pilates is kind of a household term
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. Maybe not correctly if you're looking at it through a classical lens, but there are, to your point, many other people who have contributed heavily to the way that it is taught and passed down today who I don't know
Yeah.
who they are. And it
And I
would
mean,
be,
even if you think about it, when we had John Claude Nelson come to Pi, and this is obviously not to discredit him at all, but oh, sorry, the screen flash was something I thought I was going to say. Um, I was talking to Javier about him to ask if he had heard about John Claude because Javier has been teaching, I think, upwards of 20 years at this point. And because all of his teaching, or the majority of it, had been concentrated in Latin America, and Jean Claude was based in Europe, there was almost sort of no overlap. And whilst each of them are quite well known in their respective circles and are to be credited as they should be, Javier had no clue who he was or hadn't heard about
yeah,
him. And it shows you where there are a lot of bubbles of this, but there's nothing building and bridging them all together.
yeah. And
If
even
only there was a platform that could bring
only,
all of them together.
if only, I wonder where
I
it is.
wonder where we could find it.
Even me, I I have not been teaching for very long. I had literally never heard of Jean Claude.
Neither, with all due respect to Jean Claude.
And he showed up and he was the kindest, sweetest, funny, engaging. I wasn't supposed to stay for the whole workshop and I wasn't able to stay for the whole thing, but I was like pulling myself away from it slowly
Hmm.
because I wanted to just be in his presence for longer. He was just amazing. And
Hmm.
I don't, he has a website, he has, information about himself out there, but also like coming back to putting this kind of thing behind a paywall is people have spent a very long time learning how to appropriately teach this work and
Hmm.
acquiring the knowledge. And someone like John Claude, that workshop with Pi was not cheap.
No.
And he did a chair class and he did a few privates and they were very, very expensive. And I think it's an accurate reflection of his value
Hmm.
in this world. And that is the same for whatever, story he has to tell about
Yeah.
his, and he can tell us, it's not like we're gatekeeping the story. He can tell that to whomever, but
No, of course.
we I think it's appropriate to have
If we
it.
are platforming. No, it's the same thing with anyone who we are to have on. They have decades of experience and they've worked with the people who are seen almost like I heard someone describe them as elders in Pilates. I don't love that terminology
I
because
don't love
it
that
makes it
term. What?
sound that to me does make it sound cultish and
It
elitish.
sounds
Elitist.
religious-y.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
in a negative way.
Yeah.
And whilst it does sometimes feel like a cult, because we're all very obsessed with them, we want to learn them, we want to live
Yeah.
and breathe and die by Pilates. Ultimately, it is, or at least what we are in, is not a cult.
No.
And we don't want it to seem even more unattainable than it may already seem to some people. But we do just want to honor just how many years and how much time and money they have put towards it, I guess, more than anything. And a lot
Yeah.
of these people are relatively private. A lot of them have public Instagrams that they can be contacted through. But for most of them, what they do and what they love to do is to teach, whether it be a workshop, privates, classes. You know, a lot of them don't necessarily have a goal of social media stardom. So,
Yeah.
with respect to that, it will be on and behind a paywall. I think we have more than justified. Even though I don't even think it
I
needs a
know we keep
justification,
saying it.
I think it is more than justified.
Yes. And even if no one really needs to know why. It's our decision, and we can do what we want with our own business. Um, so that's kind of the only things we want to talk about with Honeycomb. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I let you say that we have spent half an hour talking about why we have
Just a few 32 minutes about our
like there's
business.
not much we have to say,
There's
but
not
we
much to
will
say.
be justifying.
We do
Uh,
have our first interview tomorrow, hopefully.
tentatively tomorrow.
If it's not tomorrow, it'll be next week. And I'm very excited about that. That's a
Yes.
special first one. That's episode 6
Woo!
wrapped up.
A lot of
Thank
exciting
you
business
for
stuff.
listening.
Yeah.
More
We've
updates
got
to come on that front.
Yes, we're meeting with our web designer again soon to sort of really clarify things. You know, we've been working, both of us, on the back end to build up the content from our side that is needed. So there will be more to talk about soon, for sure.
Lots more. Bit of a hiccup, which we'll discuss. Nothing major, but
No, some life
interesting to
lessons to
share.
learn. Yes.
Life lessons.
So
Yeah.
it was a bit of a shorter one this week, but there we go. I
Thank
think
you for
that's a sign
listening.
we should wrap it up.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.